Okay, I think it's time to start again. My name is Inge Langset, and on behalf of the program committee, I'm very happy to introduce the two keynote speakers in the last session of this conference. It is Professor Alejandro Armellini from the University of Northampton, and from our own university, Marit Kvidal from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. If you want to read up on these two presenters and their biography, you can go to the website. It's all posted there, so I won't spend too much time talking about that in these two short sessions on 30 minutes. When I was looking into this keynote, I started thinking about the topic, and a quote that I read on a wall in San Francisco came to mind. I went to the Nordic Innovation House in Palo Alto in California, and there it said, "Creativity is to think new things. Innovation is actually to do new things." And I think these two keynotes are in that kind of change, the process and the actual results. So NTNU is in the process of developing a new campus, and Marit Kvidal will share her ideas on developing a campus for the future in her talk. And the University of Northampton has already developed a new campus, and Alejandro Armellini will talk about putting learning at the forefront of everything. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce or give the floor to Alejandro. Velkommen.
Takk skal du ha.
Well, good morning, colleagues. And first of all, an apology. My voice is not great this morning, and I promise you it had nothing to do with last night. I've got a short slot to share a few ideas with you about putting learning at the forefront of everything. And for that purpose, I'm going to share the experience of the University of Northampton. And a good starting point is who we are, what we do. Northampton is a teaching-focused university. Northampton is an employability-focused university. We have a single strategy, which is called Transforming Lives and Inspiring Change. And the strategy revolves around three key areas of work: being super supportive, being future-focused, and having some kind of measurable social impact. This strategy has a lot to do with the kind of students and the profile of students that we attract. We attract students with lower than standard, lower than traditional entry points. We attract students of poorer, traditionally poorer backgrounds, many of them first in family in university. 45% of our student population is from black and ethnic minority groups. And we have a range of challenges associated with progression, retention, and completion of good degrees. So that's who we are. I said putting learning at the forefront of everything, and a good starting point for this is to understand what we mean by active learning. So going back almost 30 years, we've got that definition in the seminal work. Active learning means that. And that definition still works for us. But how about the blend? We said active blended learning several times in preparation for this, in the title. What about the blend? If I ask a group like yourselves, what is blended learning? The answer I usually get is something along the lines of this. And then what happens is, in this university, it's not just face-to-face plus online, but in this university we actually quantify it, and we say something like that. Have you been in that position? Well, if you have, you will realize that this is a very, very poor, limited, pathetic view of blended learning, and I invite you to move well away from it. That's not what we mean. Blended learning is much more interesting, complex, multi-layered, sophisticated, messy than all of this. It could look something like this, where multiple axes meet to generate unique blends that will change from morning to afternoon, from evening to the next morning. Blends that will depend on multiple variables, not just on how much stuff you put online. This slide has the same information in a much more user-friendly format, by the way. So you've got multiple ways of addressing this blend thing. With the above in mind, the definition of active learning and what we mean by the blend in all its messiness. At Northampton, following extensive consultation, we arrived at a single definition of active blended learning. And that's what we mean. And we mean that and nothing else. That definition hasn't changed for a number of years. And that is the definition that has guided our strategy in terms of a unique, context-specific learning and teaching approach. The first item on that list refers to the notion that what matters is not really the content, but what we do with it. The content is important, of course, but more than that, more important than that is what we do with it. The second point refers to the fact that doing blended learning in a university that's just spent £330 million on a new campus does not mean going online. We are a campus-based university. We are proud to be one, and we will continue to be one. Face-to-face contact is what we value. It is what our students value. It is what our students' parents value too. The blend includes a major face-to-face element at Northampton. And the third point has to do with the changemaker ethos of Northampton, and it's a Shoka U changemaker badge that I can tell you a bit more about later if you're interested. So those are the three key things that define ABL. And there's one key word that's missing from this definition, and that word is online. It's not there. And it's not there for a reason. So if I show you that, that might remind you of something that a lot of people think it's quite new and sexy, but it's only a couple of thousand years old. Of late termed the flipped classroom. What an interesting name. It's great to see that in that way, except that it doesn't always work very well. So I would invite you again to challenge this and to think about the definition of the slide before. What's missing in this diagram? And there are a few things missing, and yes, you're going to tell me it's linear, it's quite strict, it's quite not very flexible. We'll address that in a few minutes, but there is something missing that has to do with what matters is not the content, but what we do with it, and it's the doing with it that the question mark refers to. You might have encountered situations in which colleagues say, I love my content, my students love my content, I am my content. If you're nice to me, you can have a bit of my content. Actually, the truth is you love your own lectures, mate. So all this effort that's gone into generating great content isn't coupled with a similar amount of effort going into designing sense-making activities for students to do meaningful things with that content. And that is the key element of the approach that we've taken to scale up a active blended learning at Northampton. The sense-making bit that is shown in the second box there, together with the exposure, together with the face-to-face element, constitutes the scaffold that enables our learners of that particular profile to make sense of the curriculum. Yes, pre-reading is important. Pre-reading is embedded into that first box. But we've got to be much more sophisticated than that. Read that, watch the other isn't enough. We've got to be more creative about the sense-making part of this. So when I hear people say, oh yes, they didn't do the pre-reading, well, isn't anything surprising about that? We've got to do better than that. We've got to create sense-making activities that go beyond the read this, watch that, listen to the other. So this is a similar slide. This is exactly the same content as the one before in a less linear, less rigid form. You still have the scaffold, you still have the sense-making, you still have the exposure. So I've told you, colleagues, what active blended learning is. Now I'm going to ask you what active blended learning is not. So active blended learning isn't, number one, any ideas? It makes use of non-interactive lectures, or it makes regular use of non-interactive lectures. The VLE or LMS is primarily what? A content dump. a content repository. So if all you use your Moodle, your Blackboard, your whatever's is to upload content, then we've got a problem. The third one is key. Online activity is merely an add-on, an additional element to the face-to-face sessions. What that means is that in active blended learning, we do not want two parallel track courses running one beside the other. We want a single blend operating together. So online activity feeds into the face-to-face, face-to-face feeds into the online activity all the time. And finally, there is no evidence of many things, but in this case, the one I had in mind was systematic enhancement. So that's what ABL is, and that's what ABL is not. In order to scale this up, we took the view that we had to consult on the basis of being explicit, black and white, absolutely clear, deliberate direction of travel. The direction of travel has to be upfront, clear, and agreed, and evidence-based, of course. So that's the approach we took to scaling this up, and that in its own right could be the subject of another full conversation later. We had to scale this up through building capacity. We had, and we did, over the period of 5 years, redesign our entire portfolio of courses to active blended learning. We used an approach that was mentioned earlier in this conference based on low cost, high value. For that approach, the key intervention that we used to redesign the entire portfolio of provision, we used something called CAIRO, which stands for the rather mouthful sounding Creating Aligned Interactive Educational Resource Opportunities. I hasten to add I didn't invent that name, but what I did work very hard on with other colleagues elsewhere is the Carpe Diem method on which CAIRO is based. And there's quite a lot written on Carpe Diem if you look it up in the literature. CAIRO and Carpe Diem are both a team approach to course design. Very often we encounter colleagues running a same program, or you do module A, you do module B, you do module C, and you go in different directions and you end up with a very inconsistent learning experience. CAIRO tries to address just that. It is a workshop, it takes time, it cannot be done in 2 hours. But it is, all things considered, low cost, high value. This is what it, sort of a couple of snapshots of what CAIRO looks like. It's very hands-on, very intense, very, very, very much focus on building a team out of a group. The key members of that group that end up being a team are, of course, the academic colleagues involved in designing and delivering a module or program. One of the key things, one of the key barriers that we encountered was that colleagues were not always familiar with how to write good learning outcomes based on level. The Changemaker Outcomes for Graduate Success Toolkit, which is freely available and downloadable from there, COGS, is a tool created to help colleagues write learning outcomes by level. More on that later if you want. But a key element of CAIRO is COGS. COGS is aligned to our framework of graduate attributes. And again, there could be a lot to say about this, but in short, at the top of the slide, you will see that the Northampton graduate is on the basis of this framework. His or her attributes revolve on doing the right things in the right way, with the right people, for the right reasons. Alignment between these elements, ABL, CAIRO, COGS, framework of graduate attributes, was key to scaling this up. we need to rely on digital significantly for this. Moving fingers fast or using 3 apps to death doesn't make anyone digitally literate, never mind digitally competent, and certainly not digitally fluent. So when people talk about youngsters of today being digitally fluent or competent or literate, think again. That's what we mean by literacy. With support, I can do great things. Competence, largely autonomously, I can do great things with my teaching. And fluency refers to bringing others into the party and the process of change. That's a summary. My knowledge and understanding of digital, my own digital practice, and influencing the practices of others. I borrowed this slide from someone in the room. So if you were here on Wednesday morning, you will recognize that. And of course, there's a bottom right corner to that slide. Can you see that? With ABL at Northampton, we were conscious that we had to agree on a way to address this. And yes, we would, using Alexandra's typology, we would fall into the network university model. And we thought, colleagues, that building spaces for teaching like this was not consistent with addressing anonymity, with addressing lack of sense of belonging, with addressing quality of teaching. So, our new campus doesn't have lecture theatres. Sometimes spaces, layouts, technologies are conducive to certain practices. Exactly what I'm doing to you, not with you, but to you now. I'm delivering information where we wanted to discourage those practices for today teaching at Northampton. Teacher-centered components are valued and appreciated by our students, and they do play a role. This is not really about banning lectures. That's not the point. We wanted to address bad lecturing. That's a different point. So summing up, the ABL model shaped the Waterside campus, our new campus, which opened in August of 2018. So we've been there for about 8 months. We need to think about hybrid or blended as our standard versus active blended learning as our new normal. In fact, I'm much more concerned about the active part of this, about the sense-making part of this, than the blend. And this is what happened. We built a campus in the center of Northampton, which amalgamates our previous 2 campuses. It is not big. Northampton has only 13,000 students, so by most standards we are a small university. That's what the campus looks like, and you're all most welcome to visit it, certainly while it's nice and new. We've got 3 main buildings. The key one, that one, is a learning hub. That's probably the most innovative of the lot. It's by the river, brilliant location, central. Student residences on site, a marina next to it. In case we need more space for teaching, we can go on the boat and, and ideally go away. And so that's what we built. And really, in order to get a sense of what it looks like, you really need to visit the place to understand what a campus without lecture theatres looks like. But that's not all. It has no staff offices either. And that bit of it, referred to as open plan sometimes, activity-based working, that would deserve another conversation on another session. But you see the presence of the word personalization there, addressing the anonymity issue through personalizing the liquid state. So that's what we've done. And yes, we might be jumping the gun a little bit by attempting to evaluate this so soon after the move. We've started some work on this, so I'm going to share a bit of that now. We need to think about the difference between what we often call interactive learning spaces and practices that are conducive to meaningful interactions in any space. What I'm trying to say, what I said about the content, I apply here to space. Really, what matters isn't that much the space, but what we do in it. We might have wonderful facilities like R2 in the picture there, or we might have slightly less exciting ones like R1. But the practices that we deploy in those spaces, those are the ones that make a difference between a good and a brilliant learning experience. We took a view that we wanted to declutter teaching spaces. So we built a campus where teaching rooms have no lecterns, no fixed computers, no cables, no connectors, no projectors, no keyboards. So I took the liberty to take a couple of pictures on day one of another room on this campus to illustrate what we didn't do. Our rooms are pretty clear. They have no clutter. We have used Barco, particularly the WeConnect product of Barco, which I summarize there as wireless collaboration, presentation, and student activity for knowledge construction. And we ended up with a campus that focuses on efficiency of space. The majority of our teaching rooms are multi-purpose, flexibility, collaboration, and the shared view of the learning commons. The learning commons vision, a building that is not owned by the library or by the Faculty of Social Sciences or by anyone else. It's the learning commons, and by definition, that hasn't got an owner. We are all the owners of the learning hub. That's a picture taken from the learning hub into the creative hub, another building there. And I'd like you to think about those words there. There's 8 of them. A colleague of mine and a friend of mine, Professor Gilly Salmon, created, on the basis of those words, a diagram, an infographic about education 1, 2, and 3.0 that looks like that. So you got your 8 words down the left, and you go across the slide, and you have the different stages of development for each of those words. My question to you, colleagues, is what does education 4.0 look like? If I asked you that, and if this was a workshop, I would be getting you to do a few things around that element of it. In the interest of time, I'm just going to be very autocratic. I'm going to give you my answer. But it is, of course, my answer today. My answer in a month's time might vary, might change. So at the moment, that's my take on it. Students, learners as partners, learning as active, augmented, personalized. Knowledge is co-developed, refined and applied through collaboration, academics as partners, learners, enablers, leaders and mentors, teaching as adaptive, creative, context-sensitive, graduateness, leading to ethical, digitally fluent, future-focused citizenship, technology, negotiated, intelligent, integrated and normalized, and by normalized, we mean transparent. You'd no longer see it. A couple of decades ago, you would walk into a teaching space, say, oh, there's a computer there, oh, there's a projector there. When something is transparent or normalized, you no longer notice it. You just use it. And learning locations, purposeful, AI-enabled, and diverse. And again, this is my take today. Conclusions, colleagues. For the upteenth time, what matters is not the content per se, but what we do with it. So if you forget everything else, remember this: content is not king. Context is. What matters is not the technology. This is a tough one to swallow, but what we do with it. Of course, it's important to have technology that is appropriate and fit for purpose. But what matters the most is not the person who holds the key to that room where all the tech is kept. What matters is how we use it, what we use it for, and what outcomes we get out of it. What matters is not really the space, but how we use it. You can have a fantastic learning location like R2 in that picture on this campus down the corridor. It will help nothing if we don't use it wisely. The question is not, does X work? X could be R2, X could be lecture capture, X could be your new VLE, X could be any new tech that you can think of. The question is not, does it work? The question is not, should X be part of the future campus? The question should be, much more interesting research question is, how can you use X to do great things? Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very interesting a keynote, especially from the point of a teacher and educator. I have questions, and I'm sure all of you have got questions, and you can discuss later on in Meet the, what was it called? Meet the Speakers Lounge, if you want to. And thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Then we are getting ready for the next keynote speaker, Marit Kvidal.
So, then I'm on. Thank you. There. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to colleagues interested in campus development, and I am the project director for campus development at our university. We have a main project at NTNU, which is co-location of the disciplines which are today spread on several campuses over the town. We are in a process already because of the merge with the college some years ago, but then we have a lot left. We have several locations. Some of them are disciplinary. All of them are disciplinary today. We have 22,000 students and 5 of almost 6,000 employees in the main hub today at this area, in this area. But we have 10,000 outside. And the character of NTNU is both the technology, which are the main characteristics, but then again we have a broadness in our disciplines, with both humanities and social science and medicine and everything, that give us the opportunity, a special opportunity, to be an interdisciplinary university. In Norway, we are in a very special position to achieve that. So we want it to be like this in 10 years, or 8 years, or 9 years. It's very busy. So the only hub outside the city campus area is the ocean laboratories up in the hills, because that's where the mountains are close to the surface. So it's very heavy. It's oceans of water for experiments up there. But then we'll have almost 35,000 students within the city campus, and almost all our employees and all the disciplines. That will make us special and give us a very strong opportunity to promote the interdisciplinarity, and then we should have that focus in the planning of the common campus. And then we consider how to place the disciplines within the co-located campus. And we have used 1.5 years with a group of representatives from all the faculties, all the disciplines, discussing how the hubs of disciplines should be in the co-located campus. And it's interesting because they are making hubs, and they are familiar disciplines that they didn't have seen before. So it's interesting and it's kind of fun to see how campus is, the consciousness about campus as a tool is rising in the organization. And then we have to build layer on layer, not to have the whole picture at once, but layer for layer make the whole picture. So this is one layer decided by the president and his staff earlier this year. We have, this is all, of course, the base, the core business of our university is the base for everything we do. But the most important brick and base for everything we do in campus development, from my point of view, is something else. It has to be something else, because if not, we're failing and we have resistance all over the process, through all the process. We have to consider the main brick, and that's people. It's not privatization or individualization, it's people. Students are people, employees are people, operating staff are people, even the president. So we have to consider people as the main, as a brick in our castle, which is campus or the buildings, or the facilities, or the amenities. We have to do that. And every time we fail, considering this as the main brick, the process fails. Because we're measured by the processes we make, and the goals are because of the processes. So one of our first things, I started in this job 3.5 years ago, and then one of the first things I addressed was a plan for involvement. How should we explain both faculties, the science staff, the operating staff, and students? How should we explain the process of a building project? We are builders, we do this all the time. We are planners, we are process leaders. We do this as a profession. But all people exposed for our actions are doing this once in a lifetime. So we have to translate the building process into the language of a user, both the end user, the unions, the experts, the decision makers, 4 main groups. And we have to consider the special culture in Norway for decision making and the democracy within the university, within the democracy of the university. And that's a challenge when we meet the builders, the really builders, the engineers, because they are used to have a defined project and just go on. But then we have to consider on all levels in the process, what shall NTNU achieve by this? Not only the strategy, but also when we get down to the department, what should the department achieve? We have to do that before we can go further in the processes. We have to be considering the aims of this. And then the awareness of the physical infrastructure as a tool for our mission, ambition and goals, our social mission, not only the disciplines, but the social mission about being a university. Is the physical infrastructure is important. as one of the tools, not the only tools, not the most important tools, but one of the tools to achieve the goals. Organization and culture is, of course, important, and we have to work with that in the parallel with the physical infrastructure and the technology. Nothing of this are going to work not considering the others. And we have to realize this triangle to acknowledge the physical infrastructure as a tool. And then, when I started in 3.5 years ago, there were no question, there was a lot done at our university. For instance, we had this report, Visions for Campus Development, made by Professor Tore Haugen at our university, which is kind of not a Bible, but maybe. Because nearly every week I still look up something in this one. What was said about broadness in disciplinarity? What was said about interdisciplinarity in this book? And then we have the strategy, of course, which is revised sometime, and then we have the platform for merging with the college. We had a merge with a university college some years ago, and that changed NTNU, because we had other professions within our staff and in our study programs and everything. So we have to consider that as well. And then the Bible. And we have a common plan for campus development, together with the municipality, together with the region, together with the businesses in this area, together with the student welfare organization. We made this master plan, common master plan for campus development. And that's also, it's quite short, it's 8 pages, but that's the common goals. We describe what goals are common, and we work with them, and focuses less on the ones we not agreed on. And then we have these central and ministry processes in Norway for investments of this size. We have concepts, considerations, and we have more documents, and every time they try to measure, should we do this from, is it going to pay back to the society? Every time the answer is yes, it's going to pay back to the society, because the interdisciplinarity for the education, for the learning, is the most important thing to achieve by this. The researchers are kind of finding each other, cross borders, cross campuses and everything. They don't really need the common spaces, at least they think so. But the students, they don't know of any other discipline than their own often, or the ones nearby. So it's a lot of documentation of why we should do this. And then we had to consider, okay, what's this saying, all this meter of documents? What is it telling us about really campus development? How should we translate this into campus development? So then we placed a dean of architecture and design here at our own university in head of a group of 4 other deans, the CEO of the student service organization, several other people, the CEO of the business organization in this region, a lot of smart people sitting together and discussing what does this mean for campus development. And they found 6 principles for campus development that should be followed in all the perspectives of campus development. Not only the physical overall location, all the zoning or the buildings, but every issue should be considered through the glasses of these principles. The campus must be unifying. Every time I come to my aunt's, I see this family photo on the wall, and I'm at home. This is the way a campus should work that way. You should see your family. You should feel like your family, the NTNU family, when you are in one of the NTNU's premises. So it should be urban. That's quite a. It's the word urban could be quite tiring because it's well used, but it should be open, inviting, and common for most of the people. And it should also invite the city into the campus and vice versa. The campus has to be a network of hubs. Alejandro could talk about the learning hub. We also have the idea of a learning hub here, but that should be in the connection with the other hubs. And we should be aware of what we're placing in the central learning hub and what we need in the decentralized hubs. Because the disciplines are placed in the decentralized hubs, and they also need learning spaces. So there had to be awareness of that. It should be effective, especially in the sustainable way. We can't have areas not used frequently. But first of all, it should be effective in doing our work, in doing our learning, in doing our innovation, and cooperate with businesses. Sustainability has become, it's of course, it should be sustainable. But then again, when we are going to build up to 92,000 new square meters and rebuild up to 45,000 square meters, it's quite hard to get that sustainable in itself, because new buildings are not good for the climate to build new buildings. So we have a goal of being a zero emission campus in the end. And we have quite good standings for that, because we have area here, energy supply, one connection to the national network for energy and heat. So we have a good opportunity to reach it. And then again, the last one, the campus should be a living laboratory for our own research, for our own students, and also for the city around us. I could talk about these principles for the rest of the days, but I'm not going to bore you with that. You can find it in our net site. Alexandra Den Heijer on Wednesday talked about the three main principal models for campus. The traditional one, which is the main building here, the network, and the virtual. And what we are trying to do is combining the best characteristics from each of these and try to overcome the negative consequences you described. Because there are negative consequences of each model, but there are very strong advantages of each model as well. So identity, for instance, that's identity on several levels, because we have the identity of NTNU, we have the identity of social science, and then we have the identity of sociology. So on several levels here, we have to create identity for, first of all, the students, 40,000 of them, and then in NTNU overall, and then also the employees. And then the new group. I think a modernization of the campus expression is to integrate businesses in the campus. I think to have it, to promote innovation in a campus, it should be diversity on campus. And we have a challenge with that as our campuses is today. So the next level in our campus work was to look into work patterns survey activity among our students and the employees, and explore how our premises is used today. And that's, another goal was to find some high-level concepts for the areas that should be built in a new campus. It's quite hard to do surveys here because we have an anonymity in the university which is important. It's very important. So the areas are used very different, but then again, not that different. The appearance at the working place is quite the same in several departments. And the pattern of use is also not so different from department to department, from study program to study program. So we have found some common patterns to describe concepts for future premises, for future buildings, for future workplace, for future learning hubs. Not too detailed, because we want departments to hold on to their identity as disciplines, but we have to share the premises more and more in the future. So it's important to look into what's common. And we did area assessments, both bottom up with the departments and top down, because we had to. The department, the ministry, challenged us to come up with a frame for the new, frame for how many square meters to build for a new campus. So this is the principles for design. Flexible solutions, coherenting zoning, not only silence and concentration, but also city life and learning. Different kinds of learning, individual learning. It should be opening up and inviting in, and that's demanding an awareness of what do we put in the ground level and what do we put up in the stairs. We visited Parsons schools at Manhattan this winter, and they said, nah, academic work not higher than the 4th floor. It's not working because they're not connected with the rest of the campus when they're in the 5th floor or even further. So that's over the 4th floor, it's housing for students at that university. It's interesting. Identity spaces. We have a challenge with students quitting in Norwegian universities. By giving them a space of identity, we see that lower the fewer quit when they have a space of identity. And what is identity? Is it a study program? Is it a department? Is it a sports arena? Or is it volunteer work the students do in their spare time? I think you should combine it. So when the students go into the learning hub, the central learning hub, they also go into other kinds of identity areas and can find one community to belong to. Because among our 40,000 students, they are people, but they are individuals as well. And it's not, we can't be sure that the student in maths also find his friends in maths. He might find his friends in music or in electronics. So the identity for each study program and each activity should be crossing. The intuitive network here at our campus is not as clear as it should be. It's been a kind of grow as we need to grow, and the plan, we have a plan, but not as hardly, well, we haven't followed it as good as we could. And we should have overlap of functions. So we have a main concept for area planning, a main central hub. What is the signal of NTNU? Where to go to be sure to find some good learning spaces, which had concentrated but varied learning areas. I can tell you that the student union here has a zero vision for this kind of learning areas. They don't want it and any new of it. So the theaters we have enough of it. And then, of course, we should have good workspace, and they should be adaptable. Because we work in different ways, both over time, both within disciplines, both under disciplines borders, and we don't know how these disciplines are gonna locate in the future. So all of our buildings are gonna have workplaces that should adapt almost any other work pattern. So this is a trace. I hope you can see the trace now from our strategy through the documentation of what we need and what the aims are, through the principles of quality, to the principle of design. So this tells us how we should do it. And when we are challenged, because this is a main thing in NTNU, we challenge. So we're always challenged. Why do you pick that solution? Well, we can trace backwards and tell why. So when we're challenged of a solution, it might be because the strategy is too old, or the principle has changed, or the world has changed. But that we have to make that be conscious about that, so we don't change because we don't want the solutions. It might be the strategy we disagree with. And that's quite another path to go and change the strategy when it gives solutions we didn't see. The principles are also used in the physical planning, the zoning, because we are a city campus within the city structure. So we have to consider the city and the city life in this. We have consequences for the city, for the historic buildings. So we made a physical plan over zoning, overall zoning, and a program for how to plan further on. We also made a principle plan for the campus, built on the principles, built on the strategy, built on people. The main building should be strengthened as the heart and face and symbol of NTNU. We could wish a new building, we could wish a new signal, someone wishes for that, but we can't come around the main building. So go with it, not toward it. So, and we should join in the campus and the city through portals and evident connections. We should establish a structure which is readable, walkable, and intuitive to all the people using the campus. We should increase activity in green areas, and we should increase the activity in the connections between campus and city and on the campus. We should make active and lively streets. We should concentrate activity around traffic hubs, because that's a strong welcoming signal to the campus. We should establish overlap between different functions and activities. Green mobility as a principle. Walkable campus is a principle. And we should reinforce density, because it's a balance. But activity generate activity. Hygge generates hygge, as a Norwegian word. So we should do that also for the climate goals. But then always remember what the main brick is. Never to forget, because if you forget, the processes are stopping. So, if my mission is anything, it's to do the campus better for people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Merete. Have you got, we got time for one question, if there is one? No? Well, in that case, you will be able to talk to people in the lounge afterwards. Okay, Fredrik, it's up to you.
Okay, I hope a lot of you have been voting because now is the last award for the best paper award. It will be presented by Christian and Gabriele. Please.
Hello again. It's actually quite sad to stand here now. Now we're done. But we are, and thanks to our keynotes, that was amazing. Really good presentations. The last final, very, very short award ceremony for the Best Paper Award, which awarded the Best Oral Presentation. Now, we couldn't give that before because there was, of course, presentations also today. Now, this year's winner is described as presenting a wonderful and fluent presentation that created great engagement for the participants joining that session. This year's winner of this award is Alena Droit for her presentation of letting students design their own dashboard, learning analytics from a student perspective. So I have to ask, Alena, are you still with us? There is a chance she's not. That sounded kind of bad. I didn't mean it that. Well, that's the backdoor with Friday, but we will, of course, send the award and a gift to the University of Osnabrück in Germany. I don't know if I pronounced that correct. But anyhow, one final applause for Alena, a student representative that was here at the EUNIS Congress. So then, I give the microphone back to you. Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed getting to know you.
Okay. Thank you. It has been a pleasure hosting this Congress, EUNIS 2019. To make this happen, we have had great help, and now I'm looking for Sophia. Can you please come here? And all the helpers that has made it possible. And please, Sophia. On behalf of all the students that has helped out, please, thank you very much. Planning a congress like this is some work, and we started early. And doing this I have someone I would like to thank especially. A Congress need a content. Content is important. Please, just a minute. This is me planning. Gabriele, please. Thank you. And of course, having a Congress, we need to have some fun as well. Miriam, I hope you are here. You promised you should be. Thank you. I didn't see you. Thank you. It has been so much fun at the social events. Thank you. And at last, doing such an event, we need someone that is structured and have doing all the things. You're seeing me running out, picking flowers. This is because Monica, come here. Monica didn't know about the flowers. Monica, the reason for this being so great. Please. Thank you. Oh, a hug. And with that, I say thank you and this Congress. And welcome to University of Helsinki in June 2020. Thank you.